Steve Donlevy from The Post said it best, what's in a name? And we've been fighting over this name for a period of about 13 years. It's something that you start to build at a very young age, and you don't realize how well known the name is until you start to look around. I mean, I go through the airports in China and Japan where the garments were sold, and they would ask me, Mr. Versace, are you? I said, no, you got the wrong guy. Same name, wrong guy. Because nobody knew what I looked like, and I like that because it's always worried about kidnapping and doing, I never had any. Most people travel with bodyguards and travel with a staff. I always wanted to travel alone, and it never caused any commotion, so I felt pretty safe. And I was baptized in the small town, Bianco, where I was born. This is a certificate of Nashita, which means a certificate of birth. And here it says I was born January 6, which is 1938, and that's 1938, in the town of Bianco Novo, Reggio Calabria. Here I received my first communion in Bianco Novo, and that also in the small town of Bianco. And my father's Carmelo, and they gave me several names in that. They gave me Alfredo Antonio Michelangelo Versace. Make sure I don't get lost. And we began to sell these shoes under the Alfredo Versace label to Foot Locker, and we were doing very, very well. And also the shoes began to sell in South Korea. They were selling in China, and I think some of them even went to Japan. But it was really starting to spread out. And at that time, Johnny's lawyer from Florida contacted me and stated that Mr. Johnny Versace would like to invite him into his home to come down and clarify some of the product that we're doing. And I said, I'm a little bit busy now, and when he comes to New York, I will sit with him. So I said, thank Johnny, but there was never any problems with Johnny Versace. And then 1997, I think, and all the hype of my career, Johnny Versace got murdered.
Fashion designer Gianni Versace was shot and presumed dead outside his Miami villa this morning at approximately 9 a.m. local time. Mr. Versace had been returning home from a nearby cafe where he had been having breakfast. A police investigation is currently underway. They are searching for a suspect who has been described as a white male, approximately 25 years of age. More details to follow.
I mean, I got very, very upset. I said, oh my God, we lost a treasure. I mean, the man was brilliant in his colors and his design. I mean, he was a wonderful, wonderful designer. And I felt terrible that, he was the first one to say we are related. We came from a very small town, the Versace name. There were several, my father had several brothers. his grandfather, my grandfather has several brothers, so we all came out of a small pocket of south of Italy with the Versace name. And today Donatella says we're not related. Maybe it's her, maybe it's the attorneys, I don't know. But I often asked her if she would mind taking a blood test. She refused. But from what the family tells me, that the father worked in Bovolino, which is the town that my father's family came from, and they were first cousins. My father and Johnny, from what I understand, had the same grandfather. So Johnny and I would be considered second cousins. And it was Johnny's statement that he said it, when he spoke to Yves Saint Laurent, he considered me, he said, this is my cousin calling you. But Johnny was very, very aware of what I was doing, much so than I was aware of him. I mean, I did not look up or look down or look at his designs. I just did what I did and moved on until after his death. I felt terrible. And after that, I wanted to go and pay my respects, and it was only invitations only. I made several calls to Italy, and they just never returned the phone call. Or when they said, no, you're not invited or whatever, I felt terrible again that I could not go, because he was a nice man. And about, I guess a couple of months after that, the lawyers began to send letters. And the next thing I knew, we got sued worldwide. I mean, there was lawsuits at one point, one time. They had lawsuits in Korea, France, Germany, Italy, the United States. I mean, worldwide. Wherever I worked, I got a lawsuit there. And this was a well-constructed plan to really attack someone all over the world, which I was not prepared to handle at that time. The cost was astronomical, and it was just terrible times, and that case lasted 13 years. When we came from Italy, my father was involved in a small factory, and they were producing artificial silk flowers. So he would bring home what they were called homework. And my first inspiration that I got, the first year we were here, Easter, and Easter is a big holiday. Everybody gets new clothes for Easter. And we were at home, my father would bring home the leaves, the stems, the inside of the flower. So what we would do is we would sit after dinner. My mother, my father, and my brother, myself would sit at the couch, and we would have a table, and all the flowers would be laid out, the stems and the leaves, and my father taught us how to put these flowers together. And then he would put them in a box and take them to the factory, and he would sell them to store like Abraham and Strauss. It was called A&S, Macy's. So around Easter time, my mother says, we have to buy clothing for Easter because it's a big holiday for us. So she took me downtown on Fulton Street. There was an A&S store there. And we walked through the store, and my mother bought me a suit. Then she brought it home and tailored it. But while I was in the store, my mother posed me and says, look, Alfredo, she says, those are the flowers you make home. And I looked up, and in these fancy display boxes, there was these artificial flowers that we had made home. Wow, I said, Mama, those are the flowers we make. And all the ladies were buying, and they're wearing their hair, they put it on their coat. And that's the time I got an inspiration to say, I could do this. It's so easy. And then I began to look at garments and clothing, and I would look at a pair of trousers, pants, and I would say, oh my goodness, I could do better than that. I could make a better pair of pants. I know I could. I was all at 12 years old. And I guess that was the first time I realized that what I had made home was actually being sold in a department store. And I got such a warm, wonderful feeling to say, you know, I made that flower. And that really gave me so much joy as a child. I said, that's what I want to do. That's really all I wanted to do, is just take something and make it better. And I started there.
Well, the first time I met Alfredo was at an Italian restaurant with my friends. It was in Little Neck, Queens at El Bacco. And Alfredo walked in. I didn't know what to expect. I was told, hey, he's Johnny's cousin. And I said, Johnny Versace? Mr. Versace, the real Versace. You're going to meet him tonight. I said, great. So he walks in, and very dapper, distinguished man. Always has a nice jacket, and he's got the handkerchief. Looks like he just stepped out of GQ. So we sit down, we meet him, and now I'm not the type of guy that runs and embraces people when I first meet them. In fact, many times I get accused after I've met someone that, oh, you didn't like that person? I said, no, I like that person. Well, you didn't seem to like that person. I generally wait, see the lay of the land, get to hear what has to be said. I assess the person. I don't jump to conclusions right away. I take some time with it. And maybe I didn't speak too much at dinner, but at the end of dinner, I remember calling Tony, and I said, Tony, this man he's a good guy. He didn't overspeak. He listened to what everybody else had to say. He didn't try to dominate the table. I said, I like him. Maybe he should be part of the crew. Maybe he should be part of the group here.
You should be there every Friday night, or maybe not. But it's a terrific relationship. Let me tell you, Alfredo is the kind of person you can count on. You know, when you say, I have great friends, and whatever, they'll be there for me. I know he'll be there.
And I'll tell you, just try calling him. If you call him and you're in an average mood and you call him on the phone, he'll say, Dennis, how are you? How are you today, my friend? And you know what? Even if you're in a pretty lull, a little bit of a lull, you just find a way to just pick yourself up, because you can't be that way with him. You say, I'm good, Alfredo. I am good. How are you? I'm fine. And he never seems to let whatever happened to him take any one of his friends down. We feel bad when we hear those stories. We'd love to help, but at the same time, he always figures a way to make things better. And he makes things better for everybody.
Taste that.
Along with the pepper?
Yeah, just take a bite. Don't eat it.
Take a bite and don't eat it?
I mean, just take a bite. Don't eat the whole thing. Just take a bite.
What are you talking about?
Okay,
I trust you, you know.
all right, take a bite.
I gotta take a bite
Just take a bite.
and not eat the whole thing.
No, you just take a bite. I don't.
I can eat the bite.
Oh, you can eat it if you like, but then I want you to taste it.
You mean I'm not gonna like it?
I want
Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay. And then I gotta have the real thing.
Yes. That's what the Greeks don't understand. A child in Italy. My parents had the way they earned their living was with olive oil and wine. So it comes the season to make the wine. We didn't have machinery. It was right after the war, 1945. Wow. To pick the grapes, they bring it down to the old ways where they would actually go in this place where they dump the wine. It was the size of this room, and people jump in and squash them with their feet, literally. At that time, I was about 10 years old, and I had to make I had to go. I had to urinate. So I look around. I'm in this big and first a room like this. We squeeze the grapes, and it's tilted. See, and then it runs out to a room below, and then they get pumps and pump it out. So I says, where am I going to go? So I says,
Do not tell me.
I swear
You're
to
gonna
God.
tell me what you're gonna tell me?
So to the guy next door, I says, I gotta make pee-pee. I gotta urinate. He said, back over here. He's ready to go outside. I said, so there I am. We didn't have any zippers. We pulled down pants. Who walks in? The guy that's gonna buy the wine. The Frenchman. Oh my God, he says, stab! In French. Goes outside screaming. My grandfather,
Oh no.
this guy here was a mountain police officer.
Wow.
Got stabbed many times, he got shot. I mean, this guy was a warrior, he was a no-nonsense guy.
Right.
He says, what's the problem? He says, your grandson just peed in my wine. It can't be. He says, come, I have proof. Everybody around, everybody want us there, everybody said, no. So he says to me, Alfredo, did you pee the man's wine? Tell me the truth. I says, yes, Grandpa. Oh my God, he says, you can't do that. So the guy says, now, he says, I don't want the wine. He says, you don't want the wine? He says, somebody else will take the wine. Have a good day. I want to get at a better price. He says, my grandson wants to pee in that wine. He can pee any place he wants to pee. The price is the same.
Wow.
This was 1945?
1945.
What year, could you check the year on that?
I hate to tell you, this is 1945. No Calabria. Finally, Johnny Versace explained to me that he does not own the name Johnny Versace perfume. It was owned by an associate of his. His name was Yves Saint Laurent, which is a world-renowned designer. Okay. And he told me, if you wait 10 minutes, he says, call him. And he says, you can speak to him. He'll speak to you. Just tell him who you are. He said, I will call him and tell him that Alfredo Versace, my cousin, is calling. Please see if you can help him. And I said, thank you. I waited 10 minutes. I called the number and someone answered. And I said, could I speak to Yves Saint Laurent? He said, who's calling? I said, this is Alfredo Versace. He says, just a moment. I waited a moment. Mr. Yves Saint Laurent got on the phone. He says, are you the Johnny Versace's cousin? You're all crazy in that family. He says, they're all nuts. He says, John explained to me that you're trying to sell his perfume and somehow you cannot get it. He says, what is it that you want? Well, I said, I own a perfumery here on 34th Street and 6th Avenue. And I said, be nice if I can get Johnny's perfume. The store is called Versace Boutique. He says, yeah, I think I could help you there. He says, call up this gentleman. His name was Jambroni. He says, call him. He's the distributor for me. I will also give him a call and place an order, and he will deliver. I make sure he'll deliver the order. How's that? I said, well, I appreciate it. I thank you very much. So sure enough, I said, that was very nice. So I called this gentleman, Jambroni, which is supposedly was the distributor for Yves Saint Laurent's product, which is owned by, used Johnny Versace's name on it. And sure enough, about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, maybe 2 weeks, delivery comes. Now, for you to open to any line, you have to order a minimum of the $10,000 order. You cannot order less than 10,000. You cannot buy 5 pieces, 10 pieces. There's a standard in the industry when you first open. So I said, I knew that. I was expecting that. And the merchandise came, the maybe $10,000 plus. And usually they open a line of credit or you pay on delivery. And I found out that there was no bill left there. So at that time I thought, they're just going to do me a favor, deliver the merchandise, and I cannot get any more. And that's not what I wanted. So I wanted to pay for it. And he delivered, and we put the perfume up. I had this beautiful, beautiful, it was a show area. I mean, it was just gorgeous, beautiful boutique. And we began to sell Gianni Versace perfume. And after that, I could order. There was never a problem. Finally, I got a bill. Finally, after months, I kept calling because I did not want to end that agreement, where I would get a one-shot deal then stop. So Versace Boutique was established and incorporated in 1987. Prior to that, I opened up Versace Realty Company in 1972, and that was in existence for a very long time.
Alfredo Versace, what a guy. I met Alfredo, it was back in 2004, and I sold this PR firm, Transmedia Group. It was doing very well. I got quite an offer for it. I accepted it, and we went to New York. We left Boca Raton, Florida, and went to New York. And I bought a beautiful apartment in the Essex House, right overlooking Central Park. Oh, we were top of the world. And we would go to some nice parties and meet great people. My wife then was since passed, but back then we were at the time of our lives. And among one of the most interesting guys that we met and became very good friends with is Alfredo. Alfredo meant something very special, particularly to my wife then, because she was born in Italy. And, they spoke Italian. And she knows the Versace name, and very impressed. And they also both in the world of fashion. My wife was a seamstress. She liked design and so forth. And she saw in Versace just incredible inventiveness, talent. And it was so wonderful to be together. The Laugh Factory was a comedy club on Times Square. And we would invite Alfredo to all his parties because you have a party, he's the guy you want to invite. Because he's so interesting. You talk about the Versace name. A lot of people don't realize the contribution Alfredo made to that brand. It's just incredible. He's the one who globalized it. Yes, I mean, he's a well-known Italian company and so forth. Very respected. But he's the one that sold umpteen $million worth of product all over China. In places of the world, they never heard of Versace, but now, after him, it was a brand. He globalized that brand. That's the irony of all of us who know and love Alfredo. To have a court take away his name is just preposterous. Nobody can understand it. He was the genius in that family. He was the most skilled, most creative, idea after idea. Whether it was designing a bag for golf clubs or, a pocketbook using exotic skins. I mean, the man was a genius.
Alfredo has added is the fact that you can grow. Look, when you're young, you're professional, you're a hustler, you make everything happen. Then you get older and things slow down. And at some point, some people just say, I'm retired, I'm not doing anything, I'm going to enjoy whatever I go for the rest of my life. Not with Alfredo. Alfredo never stops.
4:00 in the afternoon, I go to his house. He's like, you got to watch what I did. What did you do? I walk in with a pair of alligator shoes. What do you think of them? Oh my God, they're so beautiful. But
how about the alligator sneakers? You were so far ahead of your time.
Years
he had
and years.
alligator sneakers maybe 6 years ago, right? A couple of years after I met you.
Yeah.
And today, there's such a business in
Huge
unique
business.
sneakers, or sneakers that have been worn by celebrities, or one of a kind. I mean, those sneakers were unbelievable. He created that
More
six or
than
7
that.
years ago.
Yeah, about 8 years
And he
ago.
showed me that, and that was amazing.
Then I create high tops, high top ostrich. I used to get a lot of skins. People would send me skins, and I said, "What do I do with them?" So I would make shoes, I would make handbags, and I would give them away to people that. I mean, you take a pair of alligator shoes, what it cost me to make, and the skins goes into the thousands. And at that time, nobody heard of alligator sneakers. Nobody heard of alligator tops. You know, these are sneakers that come up to your ankles. And I would make them out of ostrich, python, snakes. I remember making a pair of python high top sneakers. And I came to your house, and it was just, I mean, they were really,
Yeah, they were amazing.
they were amazing shoes. So it was my bet. I would run it off by him. He says, "What are you going to do with them?" He says, "I'll take it to a store." I said, just make them. I feel good when I make them. I'm not in the business anymore. But you know what happens? When you enjoy producing product, you continue to do so because you can't stop. It's not for the money. People call me sometime. They say, "Could you make a bag for me?" I say, "Sure. What kind of bag would you like?" This Irma bags sells for $40,000. Could you make it? I said, "I can make it, but I will not make it because I don't want to have any problems. I don't want to copy. But I'll make something that's close to it, but it's not the same bag, but it'll be fine." And I do that. And I make beautiful handbags. And most of the time I give them away because the time and money I put into these bags for them to pay me runs into the thousands. It's easy to stitch and cut and will look nice in a python. This bag is a little bit bigger. So we made this one out of this one. So I just rather give these bags away, or I tell them, "Listen, it cost me $700-800 for the skins. Just pay for the skins and the rest is on me."
And I got a phone call from a friend in the building who said, "You need to come down immediately because there's a person here who has these gorgeous handbags and you've got to see them." Well, I had my grandchild, who was an infant, in my arms, and I ran down to her apartment with him, and I met Alfredo Versace for the first time. And there were an assortment of gorgeous, amazing handbags. And we just got to talk and we became friends. And I left and said goodnight, got to my apartment, and within minutes there was a knock on my door. And he said, "I want to give you 2 handbags." I still have them. And we just became really good friends. And then I met him the second time. We decided to meet and have dinner at a beautiful restaurant. And I remember when I walked in, I was wearing a designer outfit. And he came over to me and he said, "Oh, that's just beautiful. Where did you get that? Whose is that?" And I said, "Well, quite honestly, it's a design I created and had made for me." And he said, "You know, I make clothing." I said, "I know." He said, "I make women's clothing. I make it in Canada. I make these beautiful gowns." And I said, "I'd love to see them." And we had this dinner, and he was telling me about how he started in the fashion business, how he started in Brooklyn making men's clothing. And I was fascinated. I was just fascinated because I started in my life as a fashion person. I made clothing, and I understood where this came from. And for me, I'm an interior designer, and I live my life creating, designing, And he lives his life thinking about design and creations and handbags and clothing. And I really enjoyed our mutual love of what we did. And so that friendship goes on because meeting someone who's a kindred spirit is always exciting.
Where's all the help here?
Put it in the garage.
I gotta put it in the garage.
Oh, put it away.
¿Cómo está?
Hey, you pay you. Where you go?
Oh, you're upstate New York?
Yeah, I'm up there.
Oh, I gotta park my own car.
Yeah,
All right,
put
we
them up
park-
there. Look,
Okay.
right? Look, put them
Oh.
up there next to that one.
All right, I'll park.
Next to that one. Look, you got the line over there.
What do you got for lunch? Hi, how are you? So nice to see you.
How are you? Nice to see you. What is this for?
They're doing my life story.
Really?
We used to have a lot of stores in South Korea. So in those days, I had taken the Paolo Gucci label. I actually owned, it was called Designed by Paolo, was the name of the corporation. I still have it. And I actually owned it. So I had the right to sell license under the Paolo Gucci label and produce product under the Paolo Gucci label. And I did produce a lot of shoes, a lot of garments. I produced sportswear, shoes, hats, just about anything that was wearable. So I get an invitation from South Korea because they wanted to produce Paolo Gucci there. As a matter of fact, one of the gentlemen that I was going to see, his name was Mr. Ko, we called him. He had the rights to Paolo Gucci in South Korea. So I got an invitation to go there. And when I got to the airport, of course, everything was wonderful accommodation. You don't have to go to customs, come this way, come that way. The limo was waiting, and I get taken to a beautiful hotel again. And there we started again. That the gentleman I went to see, Mr. Ko, was not around, but his opposition was there. And they wanted to take Paolo Gucci over. At that time, I said, I don't know what to do here, so I was put in a hotel. And I said, you guys kidnapping me? He says, no, we're not kidnapping you. I says, what are all these armed guards doing around here? I said, we're waiting for a war here. There must have been 6, 7 guys alongside of me with pistols. And I felt threatened. I said, what's this never happened before. Go to find out that a group of, I guess what you will call bad businessmen, want to take over the Versace label for South Korea and the Paolo Gucci label. The guy, Mr. Ko, that I was supposed to see there never appeared. He was never around. He was my contact and a friend. I mean, I met him here in the United States. We'll go to lunch. We come to New York. I met his wife. I met his children. Nice people. And all of a sudden, I felt I was betrayed in a strange country. I said, oh, my God, here we go again. So they tell me, you know, that the makeup line, as a matter of fact, there was a makeup line which I developed with Mr. Ko, and the name of the makeup line was Alfredo Versace by Bibico. Bibico was the company that was producing all the creams, and it's still in business. After we lost the case with Donatella Versace, Bibico took off the Versace name, and if you look it up today, it is Alfredo by Bibico. The same logo, and they're doing about $70 million in South Korea. Those are the guys. They're still in business. They just took off the second name. The Versace name is off. But Alfredo, with the double face and all my colors, are still on that cream and making a lot of money. So from going to this hotel, now I know I'm kidnapped again. I said, oh my God. Off we go. We wind up in North Korea. And I said, we're going to North Korea, and as I'm driving through, you see these huge speakers. I said, what are those? Oh, those are propaganda nonsense. Don't pay no mind to that. I wound up in North Korea in a building that was on a hilltop. I got taken upstairs. I got put into a theater. And now they're showing me movies of American soldiers being killed. And they would say, this is the 17th parallel. This is the 18th. I turned around and I'm all by myself in this theater. I said, what is going on here? After the half-hour movie was over, what'd you think? I said, what do I think? I said, what do I know about North Korea and South Korea? I said, I'm an Italian citizen. I make clothes and I sell cigarettes. How could I help you? Well, what do you want from me? He says, relax. We want your cigarettes. I said, that's not a problem. I'll sell you cigarettes. And he said, I would like you to know that you have a trademark with us, so you can sell in this country. Oh, I said, thank you. After speaking to the guy with all the armed guards, I said, what's going on here? What do you guys want? He says, nothing. We want to show you a North Korea, and the general would like to meet you. I said, my God, but do you give me a choice to come here? I said, this is crazy. What do we do? He says, nothing. Now you come back, and now we go back to South Korea. Oh, I said, that's good. So sure enough, we went through all the barricades and all that nonsense. We get to South Korea. They take me up in the office. I said, look. I said, this is crazy. I said, what you guys are doing is illegal. It's not right. You can't do this. Make a long story short, I said, look, you want the Paolo Gucci label? I said, I would give it to you, but Gucci's not going to sit quiet with this because I don't know what you're going to do with it. You want the Versace label? I said, I will sign it over. You go ahead, do what you want to do. Just let me get out of here. No, we're not here to hurt you. We don't want anything from you. Just let me have the license to the makeup. I said, I owned that. I was part owner with Cole. And now he said, I want it by myself. So Mr. Cole was nowhere to be found. They took me back to the airport. I signed one agreement with one family, and I says to them, look, I said, whatever happens here, I said, eventually everybody will be exposed. And I remember, how much you want? I said, I'll tell you what. You give me $300,000 a year and I'll give you the right to produce garments for South Korea. So they said, fine. We will give you a check for $200,000 and we'll give you the other 100 within 2 months. I said, fine. I took this check and I put it in my wallet, folded up neatly, and I stuck in one of the compartments. When I got to the airport, at that time, they turned me upside down. They searched me. What these guys did reported that I took money, and they looked for cash. They looked for American Express. They searched the wallet. Unfortunately, they didn't find the check for $200. and I landed. When I came back here, I deposited the check. To my surprise, it cleared. And I never went back after that. But that was my second kidnapping. So I'm not going back to China, I said to myself. I did go back on after a few years through friends that I knew there. They knew about the ordeal, and they said that they will punish those people that kidnapped me. But you know what happens in China, that nobody ever got punished. What I would like to talk about is the double crossing that takes place behind not all of the attorneys, but some of the attorneys, where we would come out of a hearing after leaving Judge Leisure's courtroom, and my attorney would say this. He would say, you know, the judge overreached. We have to go and appeal this statement. It's not right. This is no good. And then him and I would sit there for hours and get this appeal going. He would say, tomorrow morning I'll take it in. And years later I found out he would take the appeal in on a Monday, and Tuesday we'd go back and withdraw the appeal. And I would ask him, when we're going to hear from the Court of Appeals? Oh, he said it takes a long time, but you'll hear it. And I think that was a terrible thing, because really he was not defending me. I think, according to my opinion, he was probably working with the other side. But the most devastating thing I experienced with this attorney was when he told me that if I would gather $10,000 together and bring it to a law firm out in Long Island, and then that law firm would make sure that it got to the right hands, and that will make my case so much easier. And at that time I explained to him, I said, look, we've been fighting for over almost 10 years now, and I have lost hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. I said, I have spent millions and millions of dollars in attorneys worldwide, and you mean to tell me that I go up there with $10,000, everything will be easier for me? Someone that I knew for many, many years, a Greek gentleman, calls me and repeats what the attorney had stated, that if we bring up $10,000, we would, the court would go easy on us, and I refused to believe that. So after talking to my other attorneys, they said this is a very dangerous, the only thing they're trying to do is frame you and put you away, because you show up any place with a lump sum of money, you're going to jail. That's all they're telling you to do. So I was strongly advised by other attorneys and people that I spoke to contact the authorities, because the only thing you can buy for $10,000 is a couple of years in jail.
He's just a human being that has lived a life. And I pretty much can say, I feel he's lived it his own way. He's made his mistakes, he's had his successes, he's got his failures. He's had a full life, and it doesn't stop yet. And I really, really believe the best is yet to come with Alfredo. You never know what's going to happen with him.
When you talk about ideas, I think every day he comes out with creative ideas. And he doesn't have the word can't in his vocabulary. It's not there. Everything is, I can do it. And if he can't do it that second, it's never considered impossible. It's always a solution. He always feels there's a solution to everything in life. And I'm inspired by that.
You know, awareness and hunger to always see something new. And I think the excitement that almost anything you look at, as, you know, cliche as it might sound, it truly is a blank canvas, whether it be, you know, a backdrop of a wall, a piece of muslin. What piece are you going to create out of that? You know, you have swatches of leather, and how do you turn that into a finished piece? What elements are you combining together? It's just, you know, you have a vision and you don't know how it's all going to come together, but somehow it does, and it's these unlikely, you know, places that it potentially comes from.
I had 16 boutique shops in South Korea back in the 90s. And we're about to open another 16 all through South Korea. So some of these sketches I have here, these came from the actual trial that took place in North Korea. I don't know if you can see some of these stores. These are copies, but these were my boutique shops. I had 16 of these. I did have photographs, but moving so many times, don't have many things left. I totally give up. There's another store that we had. Total, it was 16 stores I had that were functioning. And I said, as I stated before, it shows that there was 1,000 families earning a living from the Alfredo Versace stores.
When it comes to what's in a name, I mean, go back to the day you're born and how important it is and what your name that you're given means. So there's a lot of power behind a name. Now you take that a step further, when your name starts to become a brand, if that's the route you're going, not to mention a fashion brand, it's then even more important because it's bigger than itself. And then the name is becoming not only a brand, an empire, it transcends and it ultimately becomes a legacy. So his legacy to have gotten to the point that it did, only to then run into all of these roadblocks, it's an incredible, story, particularly when it comes to, like I said, this world of fashion where your creativity and your brand and your name really is everything.
He worked for me as a salesman, and at one point he turned around and he says to me, unless I get the rights to sell cigarettes in Europe, I'm going to turn around and speak to Donatella Versace's attorneys. Now I said, go ahead. And a month later, I got another call from him stating that unless I give him what he wants, he will testify against me. And lo and behold, I went to the authorities and I said that I am being blackmailed. And they looked into it and that stopped. And that's the second lie that we had. And then somebody else gave a testimony. He owned a small tobacco company in the South, and he testified against me. How they reached him, I don't know, but he said he doesn't know me. We never met. He never done any business with me, and I have checks that he cashed. We have photos together at dinner, and his wife wanted to be a model, so she wore some of my garments, and we had a photo shoot. Now, how does a guy testify in federal court that he never met me? Testimony that came up, he said he never spoke to me, or he never spoke to my son. It was just nothing but vicious lies. And the other gentleman did the same thing. He said when he was questioned about making these demands, that either you give me what I want or I'll go with Versace's lawyers and spill the beans. I mean, what he spilled, I don't know. But I used him as a witness, and he lied. He actually lied, and no one really questioned him and pushed him. I was very disappointed at my attorney that he let him walk off the stand.
I had thought of the idea of trying to create some women's fashions that would be inspired by these athletic women who played in the WNBA. And so when Nate informed me as to who Alfredo was, and then they demonstrated to me Alfredo's reputation in Asia, in China, and the East, as well as in places like Pakistan and Bangladesh, all of these various products that he had been producing. And I had never heard of Alfredo Versace. I'd only heard the name Versace, period. I didn't even know Gianni Versace. But as we began to investigate it, we thought that it was an appropriate thing to do, and so I set Alfredo to creating some designs. But as we began to go down that road, I discovered for the first time that there were all of these various injunctions and prohibitions against Alfredo. So then the question became one of, could we end up coming up with some name or something that where we get the same kind of bang, but not necessarily use the name Versace. And we struggled. It was a struggle for us. It was a struggle for Alfredo. I know that eventually we assigned to Alfredo and Nate the right to design the logo for the Women's National Basketball Players Association, which they did.
I made this for the National Basketball Players Association, and I put my logo on top. I know they're going to ask me to remove it, but it was fun doing that.
If you're around Alfredo and you get to know him and see him, he was an easygoing guy. He was always respectful. I thought he was honorable, and it was just unfortunate that that he was, prohibited from doing what he does best, and that is designing.
So that never came to life.
So here he was barred as a consequence from using the name. Well, he had to put some disclaimer on the product that he produced in order to get around some of the court orders that were, in a way, that prohibited him from engaging in a business that was consistent with his skills.
But to go back to losing the rights to use your name, and I never understood that, why that really happened. And I never copy anything from Johnny. I never copy anything from no one. It's what I would think and what I would feel, and I would try to put it on paper, try to put it into a garment. And I was very successful with it, extremely successful. And Johnny Versace never did anything to really boost my career or help me, because where I was, he was not. He was not there. He was not in the Asian market in the early 90s. I had never seen any proof of it. And it is a difficult thing to say that you cannot use your name. I mean, it's very difficult to even try to understand that when they put restrictions on your name, when you had trademarks halfway around the world, and all of a sudden you got to put design by. I never understood that. And I never understood why a judge in the United States would have a jurisdiction over me in foreign lands. I think that was not the right thing, but however, I'm not, I don't come from a legal background, so I don't know. But they did, and they compared me again, like I said, with the Boulevard Watch Company, where these people are actually counterfeiting the name. Well, I always felt that, this is who I am and this is what I do, but here we are. The only place I could use my name is, I guess, on my doorbell and my driver's license and my mail. Losing your name is not something that you can get accustomed to.
My relationship with Alfredo was fairly multifaceted. I mean, I met him under the premise of possibly modeling for him, but as time passed, I got to know more about his lawsuit. From the lawsuit, I got to know him as a designer, a lot more as a designer. So I worked with him on multiple fronts. I worked with him as a model. I worked with him as an apprentice kind of situation where I went to the warehouse with him. He showed me how things were put together. And also worked with him as a media consultant when I was working with Time Warner. So he appeared on a few of our shows and things like that. And I got an opportunity to go with him to court. And I can honestly truly say, as a now entrepreneur, I've always been an entrepreneur, but sitting there and listening to what I thought was an unjust situation for him, it's like anyone can relate to the fact that, all right, I'm born with the name. It's your name. You feel as though it's your birthright. So as I got to know him as a person, I couldn't understand, after all he had been through and how beat up he had been, how he was still this great, sweet, humble guy, but he was. I did fashion shows with him. Everything was great. He was warm and friendly to everyone. When I worked with him as an image consultant, he, image and media, I went to the court just to see what was going on with that. And I can tell you, the last time I was in the courtroom with him and the judge gave the ruling, which to me, I was like, how can, I mean, I was furious and angry and upset for him that I couldn't believe that someone could just tell you, well, that's your name, so what, who cares, you're nobody. Which was, at the end of that day, that's what everyone heard.
One of the things that really frustrated Alfredo was the fact that it seemed like the judge had bought the idea that Johnny Versace was established one and that Alfredo was a hustler. And he was trying to hustle off of what Johnny had built and created. Alfredo tried to point the fact that he had been around before Johnny. In fact, he was known in China, South Korea.
And I can tell you, I looked at Alfredo, and for only a moment, I saw a glimpse of defeat. But after that, he was back to being Alfredo. I mean, it was maybe 5 seconds of looking in his eyes, he just really looked a little defeated. But then after that, he was back to normal. I mean, he taught me a lot of lessons in life, because that day was the day he told me, you know what? It's okay, I'm still gonna be myself, and I'm still gonna do what I do and do what I love, because that's who I am. And he said the U.S. is just one small part of the world. You know, he said when you think about it, the United States is a very small part. So I'm gonna keep doing what I do. I mean, eventually, they won the cases, and they had more money than him. You know, were smart enough to trademark their name. He didn't know any better. He was a tailor, went from being a tailor to being a designer years before Gianni really became popular and famous. So, I mean, I couldn't imagine how he felt. But like I said, in all the years that I've known Alfredo, even when things were hot and heavy, not once did I ever see him look what was going on, look the part of what was happening in his life. He was always humble, always sweet. You know, I think I saw him angry for 3 minutes at one time in all the years that he was going through that. But he never made anyone feel uncomfortable being in his presence. He worked with you, he was very patient with you. And like I said, for maybe 5 seconds, I saw him look defeated. Other than that, I mean, no. I mean, for me, I became very passionate about being around him and working with him, because I just felt, what if that was me?
Alfredo would have probably risen to the heights of Gianni Versace and others. But as a consequence of the fact that that name, that Gianni Versace had made the name in and of itself a brand, a major brand, Alfredo was barred from engaging in that same kind of practice and using that name for fear of infringement on Gianni Versace's rights. But my position is that the retail market is broad enough globally that I would think that Alfredo would not have damaged Gianni Versace and his sister. I think that probably what he would have done was probably even increase the market for them, because some of the products that Alfredo was producing did not necessarily mirror those that were being produced by Gianni Versace.
These cigarettes were made back in 1992. I don't produce any product under the Versace label since I got stopped by Judge Leisure. But a lot of the product that you see on the internet, I have nothing to do with it. That is a total knockoff. There's a lot of product on the internet.
But imagine you're born with a name, you do similar things, but you're told because you don't have as much money or you didn't get the opportunity or know at that time to trademark your name before the other person, to just really lose everything that you worked for years and everything that you believed in. I couldn't imagine. I mean, but for me, I stuck it out because I really believed in him. I believe in to this day. He's talented. He's older now. He's a family man. He's got his kids, his grandkids. But he taught me a lot of life lessons. Being around him was very enlightening for me. He was one of my inspirations that as a small business owner, never give up your dream. Keep pushing. And I don't have the money to push back the way that he pushed back as much as he could. But I think it's a lesson to be learned. And in today's day and age with the internet, it's important to really pay attention to what it is you want to do and really be detailed, or you'll end up in the same boat as him, which is sad because he had the talent, he has done it, and I never could understand why. And I think it was the time that I actually asked him, hey, have you reached out to Donatella and asked her, hey, you're my cousin, why don't we work together? Why don't we do the same that I did with Gianni? And his answer was she had no interest, and she doesn't even acknowledge me as her cousin. So how far can you push that? How hard can you push that? So eventually he just gave up.
The power and growth of the Versace brand. You had Johnny, who was focused primarily on clothing, but Alfredo had expanded the brand outside of clothing into cosmetics, makeup, shoes, and other areas. So you think about these two individuals who are growing these brands, and you have to ask yourself, or look back as a case study, what if? What if they had combined their efforts? So now instead of two diametrically separate Versace lines of clothing and other product lines, that they combined that research, insight, opportunity on what the consumer wants for high quality, best in class, across all the product lines that they're in. What could have been a bigger opportunity?
I went to Japan to meet some prospective buyers. And we were walking the major city in Japan, and as I look in front of me, I see this man dressed in a jumpsuit that had Alfredo going up one sleeve and Versace going down the other. And he was wearing a pair of Versace shoes, and he had a pair of Versace pants on, which was a jumpsuit, an exercise suit, workout garments. And it said Versace on the right leg, on the left leg rather, and Alfredo on the right leg. This guy was dressed in Versace clothes. And all of a sudden, I realized, I said, my good, that's me. And it gave me a wonderful, warm feeling to see. And I think I've saw people wear my garments over the years, but this was the first time that it really hit home. I said, you know, I feel like I have accomplished something. To see this gentleman walk down the street in a foreign country with all that Versace garments on. I said, that's amazing. And as you look around, you see the shoes, you see scarves, and also overcoats. I would recognize my overcoats. I would recognize my scarves. I would recognize the shoes.
Here's one of the pocketbooks he made me. He made this for me years ago. Love this bag. Everywhere I go, I get compliments on this pocketbook. I'm like, it's an Alfredo V.
Michael Jackson was going to do a tour, and they had asked me if I would make some clothing for his tour, which I did. I had a whole line of clothing. I had t-shirts, sweatshirts, pants, but because of all the moving I'd done, I don't seem to have him here. This gentleman had designed a cap for his welding. He was a welder, and the welder has a shield that comes across the face. Instead of taking off his hat, he put a little hinge on the door. He would open it, and he would close it. And then somebody else came with the idea of trying to make this hat move. So I went to work, and I finally perfected it, where the cap sits still on your head, but the riser will move back and forth. So they had this working, but they really never perfected it. I put some time and energy into it. I perfected this. So I had made these hats for Michael Jackson. This is made out of ostrich. This is leather. And I made one an alligator. Then I had made some hats for, this is another Michael Jackson here. These are just samples. Nothing ever went into production because right before I was about to show the samples to him, he had passed. A shame. Such a great talent. What I do with my spare time, I amuse myself.
Since the 1950s, this man had been designing and producing, manufacturing great items for the fashion world.
I met him probably about 25 years ago. And I'll never forget, I was in Las Vegas at a magic show, and I seen him with a bunch of other designers, and I said, "Hello, Mr. Versace. How's it selling since the hip hop guys have been rapping about it? You know, Versace." And he said, "Wonderful, my friend. Do you know them guys?" And we've been friends ever since.
I was inspired by his story on how he used to help his mother make flowers, and they would attach flowers to garments. And when his mother would take him to the department store, she would say, "Look, that's the flower you made." And it caught on, and then he become a world icon in the fashion industry.
A lot of rappers and people in the African American community that was into entertainment, and he's dressed a numerous amount of people. I mean, I've never seen a man that's so creative, and I mean, he'll sit down with you and just draw up something, an idea. You tell him your idea, and he'll draw it up. The next thing you know, he's actually making that garment. And just like I've seen him make garments with clothes, I've seen him do the same thing with marble, or design a boat and customize it completely out. He's just gifted, you know, and he's been through so much. I mean, he's been going through battles over his name, and for what he's gone through, I mean, to be such a wonderful person, you would never know. He's always got a smile on his face, and always, "How are you?" Always asking, "How are you?" Let's not worry about me. How are you doing?
I am just so happy to be here to help celebrate one of our most world-renowned fashion icon, Mr. Alfredo Versace. When I first met him, I felt the warmth from him, such a great spirit, and was just intrigued to learn of all what he went through, following his passion, following his gifting, following his talent. And it's so similar to a lot of the stories that I've heard, but his even greater, had such a global effect. And the mere fact that he have not allowed the persecutions of what he endured, bitter, resentful, but kind and sweet. Overall, incredible person. And so tonight is just fitting to see him get this award and celebrate it for all that he went through. It's like a seed being planted, and now he's getting another level of harvest. And I appreciate that. He's such an inspiration on so many levels to all the communities around, communities whom he helped, to the African American community, many communities. So tonight I celebrate with Mr. Versace and say kudos to you. Keep doing what you're doing. You're helping so many that's coming.
Alfredo Versace.
have so many memories of our friendship. And I think back to having a lot of great times with him, going out, wearing clothing that he designed for me, and just having a lovely experience with him while he was really successful and enjoying his success. I was also with him during the time that he was having difficulties and his losing his label and losing his place in his design world. And that was really a difficult time for him and a difficult moment in his life, which he went through with grace. And he was angry, he was upset, he was miserable, but he was able to focus on what was important then in terms of getting through it and keeping his cool.
Well, I do what I enjoy. I enjoy advising young people not to make the mistakes I've made. And I did make a lot of mistakes. Mistakes are part of life, I guess. It's part of business. There's nobody that can say I never made a mistake. We all make mistakes. But when we're young enough, we could correct the mistakes we'd make. As we get older, it gets very difficult to make the adjustments that we need.
He's been angry, but it didn't hold him back at all. You know, I think it made him stronger. It's like, you know, they knocked him down, but you know what? He got up. They knocked him down again. He got up. He got up. And he gets up stronger. And he always tries to figure, what is it that I can do, you know, to be better every day as a person, to be better every day to his family, to be better every day in life. And sure, it took its toll. You know, a good business that he had, and, you know, a lot of things may not have gone his way for one reason or another, but he found strength in that, and he was able to come back.
Really, in my opinion, when they say, you know, what your name is, what's in a name? To me, everything but nothing. It's about here. And one thing about Alfredo is he has heart and he has talent. And he has never stopped being Alfredo Versace. They could never take that away from him. They could tell him he couldn't use his name, but you couldn't take his talent, and you couldn't stop him from being as passionate about what he does and who he is ever.
He still had a great attitude because that's who he is. And I think about, there was no reason for him to be in this situation. There was nothing he was doing that was going to harm anyone else's industry or anyone else's business. He was doing something quite different, and there was no reason for this kind of malicious destruction of someone's work, life's work. You can talk to each other. You can say, let's make a separate deal. You do what you do and I'll do what I do, but let's work out a way that we can do it. But no, he was trampled. He was taken apart. He was made to feel horrible. It wasn't necessary, and it still isn't necessary. But he rose above it. He's doing other things now, and you know what? You make lemonade. That's the secret in life. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade.
I enjoy most of my life. The lawsuit, I don't think it was necessary. Spent 15 years in court, a lot of money, and a lot of aggravation. Did it affect me? I guess it did. And that's something I would not want to do over again. Or would I have If I knew what I know today, I don't think I would have done that. I would find a way to give him, or take, or make some kind of an agreement without 15 years of wasting money, precious time. And under those circumstances, you don't create much because you're worried about what is the next question they're going to ask you, what is the lawyer going to do, and when is the next court hearing. So it takes a lot out of you. But I went through it, and I came out all right. I felt that soon as the lawsuit was over, I felt like I was rejuvenated, and I began to work again. Since then, I have tried to make I love to cook, so I would create different dishes, and I made a delicious tomato sauce. I lost a lot of time, but other than that, nothing else. Money and time. Time is precious. Money, we can always make a little, and we don't need that much. At least I don't. Very simple. But I did miss a lot of years of working. I enjoy my life as a designer. Designing product comes easy for me. A lot of people struggle. They have difficulties in finding what colors, what fabric, and what to make. I had never had any difficulties with that. I found design a garment becomes very simple. Making a handbag, and whatever I designed seemed to do very well. I mean, product sold. We made shoes, we made sneakers for Foot Locker, we made handbags for the nicest people in the world, which includes royalties and poor people, wealthy people. And I enjoy meeting a lot of people over the years. I did a lot of traveling. I think God has helped me over the years, and I was very successful in what I did. And if I had to do it over again, I would do everything the same except the lawsuit. It's a waste of time for me, and I think Ms. Donatella. Other than that, I would not change a thing except the lawsuit.